Hi everyone, I'm Elisabetta Silli and I'm a game designer at Naughty Dog. And I'm gonna say a few things about me to give you an idea on where I come from and what I'm gonna talk about. So I started my career at Ubisoft. I joined the company as a multiplayer level designer. That was my first job on Splinter Cell Double Agent. And then I moved out of my country. I went to Germany. I worked at Crytek as a level designer in an unannounced title. And after that, I joined DICE. So I relocated again, moved to Sweden, in Stockholm, and there I stayed about 5 years. I worked on Mirror's Edge, on the single player, on the DLC time trials. I worked on Battlefield Bad Company 2. I was on multiplayer, I joined single player, and I also worked on Battlefield 3. Then I switched team. I went to help on Medal of Honor Warfighter, and now I'm at Naughty Dog, and I worked on multiplayer and single player on The Last of Us. So the topic is going to be the challenges I faced, and this is really inspired about my last year and a half at Naughty Dog, and also I'm going to approach themes like changing new studios and other challenges that I faced. And at Naughty Dog, I really packed up all the challenges together, how to join a new team, new tools, new country, new everything. So hopefully I will give you tips and tricks on how to survive something like that. So these are the main challenges I'm going to start talking about. I'm going to approach the new studio, new tools, new game, and switching between single player and multiplayer. So regarding new studios, also, when you join your first studio, hopefully, you're going to join a new studio one day, and when you join your first studio, you really have no expectations about it. At least I didn't have. I was like, oh, I'm going to make games. That's the best thing ever. And then I discovered, oh, look, I can have all the perks. I can have free video games that I worked on. And I started having T-shirts of the game I worked on, which is, for girls, is impossible. You always have like XL size that you don't know where to put, or you give to your nerd friends. And they are happy about that. New studios, when you start switching studio, there's always some kind of clash of culture and your expectation. You have some expectations, and some are going to be met, some are not going to be met. But I personally had always great experiences. You trade something for something else, and it's really great. But not everyone manages to survive this impact. I saw people changing companies and quitting after 2 weeks, a month, 6 weeks. They couldn't stand the new philosophy. For instance, sometimes in some of the studios, you're going to have, like, at Naughty Dog when I joined, was a kind of a great surprise to me. There was no tutorial, no documentation for learning their tools. And, some people will cringe. I know a lot of people that would cringe, and I was scared to death. I'm like, oh, we're going to survive this. But you make the best out of it. So it turned out for me that it really paid off. I personally, when you join a new studio, you kind of get some time to get used to the culture. You get some time to know people. And not having documentation for anything, it made me just go to the desk of the designer next to me, of the programmer next to me, and just ask them things. So at the end of the project, and actually after a month, I felt like at home. I knew a lot of people in the project, and it felt like I was just fitting, and it just required me to be more open and going to ask people things. Also, different companies will have a different view of what a level designer is. Some companies will see you as the artsy level designer, and you might have to step up your game and learn how to make awesome meshes and do your own geo. And, you know, you're in an awesome company and you're learning from the best people. So what better chance there to learn something new and step up your game? Also, you might learn that you love doing art, and you might change your job and become an environment artist. Some other companies, you're more like a scripter, and you will have to learn how to script. And don't ever get scared of anything. Different is not bad. Different is a great change and great chance to learn something new that will just make you more flexible and more valuable as a level designer. And, you know, knowing something more will make your layout better, which is great as a level designer. New tools. So, for these challenges, tools are not your choice, like, ever. And would you stop from working on a fantastic game just because you have to change a tool? I personally wouldn't, but a lot of designers specialize on tools, and it's a career choice. I saw people being hired because they're specialists in some tool, and they would like teach all of us how to use it, and that's fantastic. But personally is not my main focus. My main focus is the game, and working on the best game, that's all I wanted to do, and I've been lucky enough to do it. So my tip is adapt. Just, you know, I don't even try to make myself comfortable anymore with tools. I see people using lots of shortcuts. I see people making their life easier. You know, sometimes there are some tools that make your tool look more like some other tool that you're more familiar with. But really, I don't like to do it. I like to make myself uncomfortable because it makes my brain stay in that state that is accepting and humble. So I'm never lazy. I always learn new things, and I don't stop anything from coming and teaching me something new. Also, if you think about it, the more you know, the more tools you know, the more valuable you are for a tool that might be developing in your own company. And that's a fantastic thing. You can criticize to improve. Don't criticize just to change something because you prefer the way something worked, but criticize to make your life better, to make the life of all of your team better and your game better. That's the greatest thing and the most valuable thing you can have. Also, now for the new game challenge. So what do you do when you start in a new game that you're going to work on? You play sequels. Like, I recently switched and moved to the Uncharted team, and what do you think I did? I played Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. Big sacrifice, right? Yeah. Anyways, what do you do? This is what I call doing your homework. This is where you study the game, discover the game, learn the game, and criticize it. Find out what you would have done better. Find out what is stellar about the game and you have to preserve. Find out the things that you could expand and add to the game and make it even better than what it was. That said, sometimes you might work on a new IP, and there might not be nothing playable. So at that point, what you do is listen. The first weeks, the first month in The Last of Us, I just listened to everything that everybody was saying. I wouldn't even put my headphones on, and I was just full radar mode, just trying to catch everything from the game. You know, ask tons of questions to the people who had the ideas for the game. Find out everything. Just don't stop. When I joined The Last of Us, everybody was super stressed. It was really intense. It was really focused, and everybody was pushing their time, tried to put every single bit of their time they had on the game. And it was really intimidating approaching them. But, you know, if you approach them, they're going to be happy because you're making the game better. You're going to help them making the game better. So you're welcome to ask them questions, and they're going to be super happy to help you. So you can understand the game, find out what it is about, because you're the level designer and the play is in your hands. For a single-player and multiplayer, as I told you before, I switched various amount of time. I started as a multiplayer level designer, and some people are going to be loving their single-player, and some people are going to be multiplayer only, super specialized. But to me, versatility is the greatest thing, not only for the company, because I'm a better value for the company, but for me. I take a break. I learn new things. And when I started a multiplayer, I started learning about level flow and navigation and how to lead the player to places and how to put power weapons and just creating vantage point, which is fantastic. And then on top of that, when I switched on single player, I learned about narrative and how to pace the player. And, you know, it was a great experience. And I think that everybody should always try everything so they can be a better value to the company and to themselves, because one day there might not be a single player game in your company. One day there might not be a multiplayer game in your company, and you have to switch it up. Now the concrete part is focused on what I worked on in The Last of Us. And I started on multiplayer, I moved to single player, worked on the combat tutorial, and did some work on the multiplayer DLC. My start on the multiplayer, actually, I didn't do any layout. I was doing game modes implementation, and I got my crash course to our scripting. And that was actually the best thing ever. I got the worst part of our scripting, which was having to deal with players, multiplayers, and network. And I iterated, and I found out our controls, and it was incredibly valuable for what I didn't know was coming next. And also, I managed to do some cover pass on level and layout polish in the multiplayer, but almost all the levels were at a stage where we couldn't change much. There was only one level that was more flexible, which was the dam level, and I did some feedback and cover pass, but that was very little. And one day, I was asked to help with the single-player tutorial. It's awkward. So, in the single-player tutorial, I was asked to help with the combat tutorial, and I started doing combat research. So Bruce called me and said, "Hi, Elisabetta, can you help us with this tutorial? We want to start and do the tutorial for the first gunfight in the game, and there's going to be some tutorial layout you will do, and you're going to script it, doing AI scripting and also environmental scripting." So it took me over. He showed me where I could find all the playtests in test cases and all the tutorial maps. So I watched them a lot. And then I started with this little area, which was the first encounter you had with human AI, and there was nothing there. There was just the geo, the main geo around, but there wasn't any cover placement because that was not the purpose of the area at all. And what he said to me is that there was a cutscene in progress, and there were going to be 3 guys, one of which was going to die because Tess would shoot at him. So here's how the area would go. Joel and Tess would come over this way, and then the two guys alive would take cover, and Joel and Tess would be in cover, and one guy was dead. In this area, I learned how to use the right AI for the plays. So I started scripting AI for the first time here, and I put the AI there, and they were acting funky. They were not taking really cover, and I was like, okay, it's a first try, and maybe there's something with the AI. You know, I was like kind of shy and like not sure if I did something wrong or was the AI. It's always the AI. No, it's always the level designer. Turns out that I didn't know that we had to use this particular AI close combat range behavior, and I didn't know about it because I was new. So what I did, how I discovered it, was like asking help to everybody. So ask questions, and this is what I learned in this area. And also, we tried to have a second wave in this area after the player was done, but this area was way too tight for our AI, and that's another thing I learned. Our AI works best when it's in bigger spaces, and we scratched that. Also, you know, it's the first combat, so we decided that 2 AIs were enough for the player. In this area, we also have Tess as a companion, and she wasn't really that helpful at the beginning, so we stepped up their game, and she's pretty aggressive in this video that I'm going to show. So this is the area where you come from. This is pretty tight. And here starts the cutscene.
Here we go.
Let us through.
You guys need to turn around and head back if you know what's good for you.
Our beef isn't with you. We just want Robert. You don't want to do this.
Turn the fuck around and leave now.
I'm not going anywhere without Robert.
Bitch, I will bash your skull unless you turn around and get your dumb ass out of here.
Fuck this.
Take cover!
So she's not the most friendly person.
You ready?
But
Yeah.
I'll cover you.
I kind of
Get the
like
angle
her.
on them.
Yeah, so as you can see now, the AI is finally taking cover, it's behaving as I wanted, and Tess is killing him by herself. And this is pretty much the combat. And as you can see, this corridor was way too tight, and this is where the second wave would have ended up fighting, which doesn't really have much space for anything, not even cover. And at this stage, we couldn't really change much in the layout itself, so we wanted to preserve as much as possible. Plus, it's a nice pacing after the first combat. So this is not really a tutorial. This is just an alley, but we thought about having a tutorial here, and I wanted to talk to you about this because I learned a lesson. We wanted to teach the player how to use listen mode. So the idea was that this is a top-down, and we had a pull-up, so the player and Tess would come up towards that direction and do the pull-up, and Tess would take cover and say, "Hey, Joel, come over here. I hear somebody's coming." And we would have 2 enemies AI coming over, and while they were approaching, the player would get a pop-up saying, "Use R2 to use listen mode so you can see enemies coming." There was a big problem. The pull-up. It would have made the whole combat really clunky. And there was a drop down in the area afterwards, which you're going to see. So, not fun. Not fun at all. And the space itself wasn't really great for combat, so we just cut our losses, didn't even try to make it work, and just left a good pacing for the player to go through. And this is how, in the end, it played.
Hey, boost me up.
So, as you can see, this pull-up takes really long time. And imagine if the AI came down here and the combat exploded and them coming up and down and make it really weird. So you could have killed them while doing the pull-up. I'm sure we could have found a better solution, but we were in such a late stage in the project that finding other solution wasn't really easy. And as you can see, this area is really tight, and we couldn't really change much. And here we get to the point that there is a drop-down, and there is another combat, and that would have ruined pretty much everything in the next setup. And here is the second encounter, which is actually my favorite. I didn't do much layout changes here, but I did a lot of cover changes and a lot of AI scripting. So the main problem with the area after the playtest, after analyzing the playtest, was that all the enemy AI was inside the warehouse, so it wasn't really showcasing outside, and the player would just engage combat. And that's not what we wanted for this area. This area, actually, we wanted to have the player to learn how to grab, drag, and kill stealthy. So we took another approach. We got the AI that was inside of the warehouse to move around so you could see them from the windows outside. And also we got two guys coming towards the player, so hoping that the player wouldn't be compelled to get out and start shooting. And we also placed them facing conveniently other places so you could just stealth kill them. And that would make also this area a bit unnecessary, was too big and too distracting for the player. And we had this iteration just play tested, and we spotted lots of problems with it. First of all, the player started shooting. There was a guy in front of him, and you have a gun, so you shoot at it. And, that didn't quite work well. Also, they were close, but not too close. And you still felt like, oh yeah, I can handle them, I'm going to fight them. No. Scratch that. Let's try another approach. We kept the area, and we had the enemy eye coming towards you again, but not stopping in front of you, so you weren't compelled to headshot them. They would go on the side, so we used the side of the truck. And also one enemy eye would come over and place himself on the side and just be looking at fantastic crates, which is great for the player. And I'm a firm believer of leading by example, and I try to do it as much as I can. So I had Tess to set the tone for the area. Tess was gonna go and take down a guy for you, and that was making the difference, actually. So she would tell you to sneak out with her, and she would take another cover position next to the warehouse. So here you can go and take down the guy over the truck that is doing your patrolling, or you can approach the area where Tess is in, and there would be a trigger all around that area. So when the player approached that place, the two enemies AI would go and talk to each other, and Tess would take the position in the room to make sure she's going to help you with a kill. So she's still setting the tone for you. And after that, she would say, I take one, you take the other. And if you manage to do a stealth kill, she would shift the other guy. So really what the player was going to have to do was killing two guys total, which is a good amount for the second combat. And also if the combat exploded, you had very few enemies left. Also, one thing to mention is that since our AI, now I knew that it works best on bigger areas, cutting the left area with a truck was kind of a mistake, because if the combat starts, it's always better to have options, and you can also hide from the guys. And this is how it plays in the end.
More of Robert's guys.
So here the
How do you
player
know
is
they're
locked.
coming? Two of our guys died trying to take Tess out. I guarantee that she and Joel are on their way here right now to get Robert.
Jesus.
And here
We
the
shouldn't
player
take
has free range of camera, so he's free to look at where the AI goes and also to look at Tess doing her ninja move.
Move up. Move up.
So this is me playing. I like to kill this guy first. Second, just drag Robin and kill him.
Okay.
And I have less people spotting me in case I go and kill the guys in the room and he's patrolling around. Is not really safe. So here I approach this area, this side, but I'm gonna go and turn all the other sides so you know I'm not lying, and Tess really says that she's gonna kill the other guy.
Let me guess. Fireflies? Yep. I lined them up against the wall and bang, bang, bang. Execute all of them.
You take one out, I'll take the other.
All over the city. They're cracking down on them hard.
I got a cousin with him.
Seriously?
Yeah. Idiot thinks he's gonna save the world. Hope he's alright.
Take it easy.
Thank you, Anthony. He's our game designer at Naughty Dog. He helped me in this area to hook up Tess and make her look awesome. And we go to the third encounter, which was the trickiest of all for me. This area actually did change very, very little. I did some cover plus in the interiors, but the whole setup was pretty fixed. The level was far in production, and it wasn't really much I could have done to change the layout. So I did what I could do, which is improve some things like the AI. So I looked at the problem with this space, and again, like the other places, the player couldn't really tell which was the threat, how many enemies they will have to face if they started combat, and they ended up getting overwhelmed in tight spaces. And there are like 3 spaces in this area, and they're quite tight. So starting a combat is not ideal. And what I did, like in the other area, was showcasing the enemies. But in this area particularly, we were introducing destructible, which is bottles and bricks. And since I believe in leading by example, I had Tess throwing a bottle for you and doing a combo kill again. Unfortunately, I didn't know that that wouldn't work because of our systems, having Tess doing an animation, and if the player was trolling her, she would end up doing very bad bugs, and I had to remove it. So that was not an option, sadly. So the only thing we could have done was putting a lot of throwables around at player height and hoping the player would take them and also give them a chance to use it. Like, as you can see in the warehouse on the left, I have 2 enemies AI that look at each other, so you have kind of to distract one if you don't want to start a combat. So the other AI would take convenient position, one of the guys would go back inside, and the other one would take also cover inside. But I'm not gonna put any other lines because this is all up to the player. Actually, Tess is not script except for following you and helping you in this thing, but this is how it plays.
Consolidated the crates in South Warehouse. Supplies are locked up.
Good. Let's
So
do
as
another
you can
one.
see, I have the AI coming towards you, not inviting the player to just engage combat. There are 3.
By himself.
Fuck if I know. We'll check in with the others and come up with something.
Okay.
And also inviting the player to take the stealthy route. We also place this guy outside there. But you have to reiterate on drag, grab, and kill him. So the other wouldn't spot you. So as you can see, there are plenty of throwables, but yeah, this is not really helping in any ways, which actually makes the player fairly alone if he wants to take the stealthy approach.
Everything's cool, man.
So I hide this guy in case the other guys start looking for him. And then I proceed splitting up the two guys talking.
You hear that? It came from over there. Take it easy.
Good for something.
So I ended up using one throwable for two guys, and I actually do a mistake from my play. Right now, I get the last guy spot me, but it kind of worked out really well because I'm using the destructible in another way, which is my favorite way, to be honest. So yeah, he's coming, and thankfully there's a bottle right behind me. And I throw it in his face, which is awesome. And as you can see, it's pretty tight spaces all around, so really starting combat wasn't ideal. And this is the fourth encounter, which is the dock encounter, and is the one that I changed the most in terms of layout. Do you see the water over there? That water wasn't water. It was a humongous space with lots of AI. This area had also the shipping containers. They were two tires, and you could go on top of them. So it was really two floors. And it created a very overwhelming space for the player. And playtest results showed that a lot of players just died in there, which highlighted a few problems. It wasn't just that. The area was too big, and so I closed off part of it. I removed one layer of it, and I also made the boat unplayable. Sad. I like boats. But it had to be done, and also I scratched out all the AI that was there and just picked my battles and took just enough AI that I needed. So this is how it ended up to be. And the main problem actually of this area was another one. It was a layout problem. It was that, so do you see where Tess and Joel are? That is an elevated position with a good cover spot. So there, everyone was engaged in combat. I did it too. You know, you get there, you're in an awesome position, you're in an advantage position, and there is a guy, and there is a headshot. How can I miss that? And I can totally handle all the guys. Yeah, I died, like all the players. So it was really inviting to start combat and feel really powerful, but it was misleading because there were a ton of guys inside the warehouse that you couldn't see. So what I did was I brainstormed with our amazing designers, and we thought about a lot of ideas. And of course, the ideal situation would be I change the geo. No. In this case, changing the height of one piece like that would have meant changing the height of all the levels after or all the levels before. Totally undoable. We were shipping like in a few months. Not possible. So scratch that, and somebody had the awesome idea to like use the cheapest thing we could possibly use. And it was like, it wanted me to implement it with just one of our animation for vaulting and jumping down to just try it out. And it actually worked. So what we do here, we make Tess and Joel jumping down. The cutscene guys, of course, did it better afterwards, but that totally did it because the player wasn't in a vantage position starting. It wasn't the most brilliant move Joel could do, jumping down of a vantage point, but it worked. And also I asked the artist to remove all the cover in that big spot. So even if you went up there again, which was something we considered, you were really exposed on both sides, so it wasn't really a vantage point anymore. For the AI, in the first part, when you're in the cutscene in this upper space, I actually showcase all the AI in the whole level. They just pass by, and you know exactly how many enemies you're going to face if you want to start combat. And this is how we fixed the first part of this level.
There's our boy.
As you can see, all the AI moving behind them, they're all guys you're going to have to face in this area.
Cocky son of a bitch.
So the player can see clearly that there are people going inside, and they're going to have to face them if they start combat.
Been around for a long time.
And this area is actually the graduation test of all the other areas. So I needed a space that was flexible enough to support all the lessons we taught the player.
I don't know who's left out there to sell us stuff.
And we also introduced the shiv, which wasn't a big deal because we already introduced stealth kills. So we just put it there for fun for the player. So as you can see, the player still feels big, and you know, for the amount of AI, it's kind of perfect, and it didn't really need much. It just makes the AI act better, being more open and giving you more opportunities. So you don't really need to kill these two guys I'm gonna kill. You can just go through the next area. But I wanted to give you guys an idea of the space and how it feels now that it's shrunk like half the size. Also, I wanted to show how good of a player I am. Also, in case of a combat exploded in this part of the level, the AI from the other side would just quietly approach you depending on how many enemies were left. So to not overwhelm you in this big space because they could sneak on your back. And in this area we had for the first time melee guys, so it was going to be kind of challenging having everybody coming at you at once. So the idea here is use listen mode because you know that there are 6 people, but I know this level, so I throw this in the face and I kill him. And this is my work in the tutorial, but I wanted to show some example on the DLC that I worked on and how working on the single player really helped me on approaching levels. And what I did immediately, like after shipping the project, The Last of Us, I started working on my level for multiplayer because I knew there was going to be a DLC for multiplayer. And I was really inspired from this level. I'm not going to give spoilers because I know that some people didn't play, but this is one of my favorite areas in the game. And my lesson here is that when you have a plan for something, when you have a plan for your level, don't be afraid of take different things and do your changes because it will pay off. You're going to gain so much time, and this is how it worked for me. I knew exactly which pieces I wanted to use for my level, and I went to take them, and this is how I changed them. So this is the bus depot, and in the single player, there's only one side where the player is going around. No spoilers, sorry. So I had to change it slightly on multiplayer. I had to add a whole layer with access for the street levels, so to have the flow I intended in my map. And I also added another room towards the ticket side, so it could really fit the size of my level. And another building I used, which is where you see giraffes for the first time, is this building that really inspired me because it had an awesome potential for sniper perches, and it was a great terrace and it had like interiors that were really spacious downstairs, and I just needed a few tweaks. So in our multiplayer, verticality is not super smooth, and also our radar really doesn't tell you if you're on the second floor or the first floor, which is really paranoia, maximum level every time you go around. It's really intense. And having 2 floors is pretty much the best solution, and also it was working better for us, and also it didn't elevate all the perches in crazy levels and crazy views. And these are the other bunch of changes I did, was opening up the second floor and just nitpicking which place I wanted the player to be able to snipe from, closing a bunch of things and adding tons of access so the player just could go on the second floor smoothly. I have to say, I think this is our most vertical level that we have, and it really worked great. So when I started in pre-production, I was actually behind the other levels, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take my time. And then we started the playtest, and I actually ended up leaving my level because it was in a great state just from the first playtest and taking over another one. And this is what I mean for paying off. If you have a plan, it just works, and it makes everything smoother. So the thing is that the other level, the only plan that the other level had, the one that I took over, was being as similar as the single player as possible, which really didn't work for it. The main offender was the height. It created a lot of slope differences that were covered by lots of stairs, creating lots of choke points on stairs, which meant that the guys were exposed during their trying to reach interiors, and it really wasn't doing great for anybody. So lowering it, it improved the flow and the access towards all the buildings. The other thing I did was scouting for better assets. The problem with this level was also that, it's the suburbs. All houses were looking the same, and it's a house. It has a living room, it has a kitchen, and as much as you change colors, as much as you try to change up props, it's a house. It's going to be hard to tell which house it is. And my idea was using different building, and I remembered from playing all the single player more times that there was this building just right in the area next to it. And no, I can't say spoilers. Sniper area. So I changed this building to fit our needs, not having it too open and not having to access for snipers. And it was one of our landmarks for this level. Also, I've been looking for bigger houses, so we didn't have to fit it with just lots of spaces, lots of houses. And I found this one, which was pretty iconic with all the writings on top, and it covered a lot of space in the levels, and it removed 2 houses. And of course it needed changes, so we ended up removing the stairs, and so to improve the flow like we did before, and removing the single-player environmental storytelling, because, in single-player, an open window up there with something hanging is telling you something, can tell you something. In multiplayer is, oh, the sniper is going to be there. How can I kill him? Oh, is he going to be there? Oh, I better stay inside. It really doesn't work. If it's not used, close it. Just be straight and use a language of interaction that works for multiplayer. And that's it for me. Every game comes with its own challenges, and you might be working on single player, you might be working on multiplayer, and it might be chaotic. You might join a game at the very end of it, and you gotta make the best of it, try to understand it. And I believe if you follow these tips, you might end up like me, which means that I not only survive it, but I kind of look forward to the game development madness that is. So this is are the other dogs talking. Go to their talks. Anthony is gonna talk. He's awesome, so go to his talk. And questions? I think we have 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Should I? I'll just stand up. No questions? No. Good. Guess I'm really clear.
Quick question. You mentioned you use cinematic to get from one place to another. Is there some hesitation in asking for a whole cinematic just to solve a little problem?
Well, no, if you plan for it. When I joined, it was really late and it was madness. Asking for a cinematic at a very late stage, I was even impressed for our animators what they did. They actually let me change a whole area and they did cuts, so to allow me just to have cover. And if they didn't cut it, you would see like the player just running through things otherwise. So if you plan for it, there's no hesitation. We actually rely on cinematic a lot. So
yeah, I was thinking like with the memory allowance animation has for like cinematics and everything, is there something that makes them want to hesitate to give you that?
No, we actually, again, it's about planning. It's about how you load your pieces of levels, and then you will manage to get everything in memory if you plan accordingly.
All right, thanks.
No problem.
During the changes of the levels from the single player to multiplayer, how much did you cooperate with the environment artists, or did you do all the changes by your own and the environment artist was just looking, screaming at you like, what are you doing with my levels?
This is where I actually learned the most about level art and how our level artists work because, after the shipping the game, we had a break. There was nobody. And I had to find myself out what to do. But obviously, after we needed level artists, I can't make things that pretty. No way. But yeah, we had like level artists assigned afterwards, and they did their magic for that.
Thanks.
How does the setting of The Last of Us affect your level design? Like, playing The Last of Us, I guess had a really different feel from going through the different levels, like a lot more corridors, and other FPSs where the setting is a lot more open. Like if you think of something like Borderlands, where you're running around like deserts and stuff like that. So how did you consider that?
Well, the game is totally different. You're slower, and the environment has to fit the game more. So the player is not going to run crazy distances, so you can have tight spaces and have a tight feeling. But for instance, if you want a combat, you build a larger space. And in multiplayer, we knew which sides were working better. And you play test it and you get the gist of it. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. Considering that you talk about the different passes that you did through the levels, usually what was the time frame between, getting the feedback from the previous, iteration of the level until the implementation of the next one and, the following playtest?
When I started, we were doing like everyday iteration on things, and you don't need a lot of players to know that something is wrong. So if something is wrong, usually we just act on it, and it's pretty quick. Especially at that stage, you really want to play every second. And we just, at Naughty Dog, we sit all together, designers. So we just stand up, grab a guy, and it's like, can you please play this? And everybody's super flexible for that. And the great thing is that it's the first time that I work in a company that is like this. So single player, multiplayer, and The Last of Us or Uncharted, we all work in the same pod. And we're all together. So, and we're the best critics and supporters for each other. So the iterations are so fast. And sometimes I wouldn't really even go to anybody to understand that something was wrong. And that's the main thing. Just fail as fast as you can so you can make it better.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, thanks for the great talk. Can you talk a little bit about the custom tools that you used? For example, did you have a level editor? Was it easy to use, hard to use? I'm kind of curious about the process, the tools that you used.
So we have different editors, and we use Maya for the layout. So that's pretty standard. And then we have other editors to implement a few objects to move around, foreground objects. And we script with a scripting language that is kind of similar to Python. And then we compile that, and that's how we script.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you again for the talk. I have two questions. One of them, I started to mention about the AI, that sometimes you have to deal with that, and I was wondering if you have to also like code something, or if you just work building the AI to certain points, see how would it work against the player. And the second question is, up to what point do you start making the level design itself? If they give like a rough sketch from the art or just some blocks, and how does this affect your freedom to change and make your levels?
So for the AI, the things I learned was how to use the AI because the AI was already there. And I had preconcepts of how to script the AI because I've been using different tools. And one of the things that I learned about asking questions, I used to script the AI that was in different states. So it was in normal state where I was scripting it and putting in places. And then I would script it for combat. Okay. But that's not how it works for The Last of Us. Our AI was working best when left by itself while in combat. And I had to learn it by my expenses. I had a lot of bugs in these AI setups. And that's how one of our designers just came by and said, "Why are you using 2 states?" I'm like, "Oh, thank you for fixing my 15 bugs. I should have asked you." But, so really depends which AI you're using, however you're in scripting. And what the second part of the question?
Was about when do you start making the level design itself? If you start, like the team gives you like a block stage or a rough sketch or something, and how does that change your freedom to mix it up whatever way you think it's better for the level design?
It depends. Like for multiplayer, there is no such a thing. We scouted from the single player, so we didn't have sketches or any. The idea was basically feel like you're in one place in the game that you've been before, and you get to play it again over and over. And for single player, I tend to not let myself be blocked by some sketches. I like to implement ideas and then I just try to match it with the art, and if I can't, I start from the scratch.
Right. Nice. Thank you very much.
So it felt like the tutorial came in quite late in the development cycle, but when playing it felt like it wasn't really, it felt quite seamless to play. So did you have to adapt the narrative at all to fit the tutorial or create new narrative sections for it?
I couldn't create any unique section for it, so I could just tweak what was there. And, we tried to really see the problems with the playtest instead of just like, I think we might change everything. And also, like, finding the simplest solution and the easiest solution sometimes is the best thing. You don't need complicated thing. You don't need the perfect thing to make it work. Sometimes just finding that thing that makes the difference is the key to make it better.
Thanks.
All right, awesome.